Matey. Hello, hello. Yeah, connect. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hello, hello.
Hi, Dylan. How are you?
I'm good, Arman. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks, and a big welcome to everyone who's tuning in. We're here just finishing up official practice
And yeah,
for for the second weekend of Ultimate E official. This time we're using Formula One 2019, as you can see. A good list of participants. We've got 20 guys on the grid. Some racing drivers and a lot of gamers. Nevertheless, very competitive. But yeah, Dylan, watching the session. I've just joined in, but you've been watching the session right through. What are your thoughts?
yeah. I mean, going throughout the session, we do see some people going quite fast. Like you see Amit on the mediums right now doing a 133. And we are actually seeing quite a close grid on the top. We can see a lot of people in a 1 second gap. And it's quite impressive actually to see that. But as the session is coming to a close, we are actually going to restart the session as we've had a couple of technical difficulties where people are not joining. So obviously we're going to restart the session going straight into quali, which is going to be a one-shot qualifying. Then race 1 is going to be 5 lap race, and then race 2 is going to be a 25% race, but with a top 8 reverse grid. So it's going to be really interesting to see how race 1 goes and how race 2 goes as well.
Yeah, talking about these technical issues is basically sometimes it's from the console of the game, but a lot of the times it's just the connectivity. As you know, since we're all at home these days, I think our internet is just not able to take as much, and sometimes some of the drivers have problems with the connectivity, and that actually makes us restart the session or just rework things around and or delays the whole process. But we do what we can. We want everyone to have a fair opportunity, a fair chance. So just to cater to everyone, I think we're just going to restart the whole game, restart the session basically, so we can start fresh for qualifying and
Exactly.
get a few participants who couldn't make it on time for this session to get them in for quali.
Exactly, and yeah, so we're just gonna real quick restart the session, going straight into qualifying, and one thing that is gonna take a little bit of time, of course, is obviously going into race two, because we have a custom grid. We do have to make sure all the drivers were, and to actually touch on that in race two, how we're actually gonna do the grid is we're gonna have a driver. We're gonna have the grid from race one, who finished in race one, and we're gonna have that grid as the race two grid. But the people who came top 8 is going to be reversed, as we've said before. Top 8, so 8th place is going to be in first, and first place is going to be in 8th, vice versa. And it's going to be extremely interesting. Aman, I'm going to let you take over, and
Yeah,
explain through.
Yeah, that's right. We do. I mean, a lot of championships worldwide run this. Even Formula 2, the FIA Formula 2 and Formula 3 championships that run along with the Formula 1 weekend run this format where race 1 is defined by your qualifying times, and we have only a one-lap qualifying. So, no mistakes. You can't run wide. All those problems would put you at the back of the grid. Would just penalize you basically. And then, so after the one-lap qualifying, that defines your race 1 positions. The results of race 1 is your starting order for race 2. But like you said, the top 8 is reversed. What this does, it makes racing a lot more exciting. It gives, it mixes the field up. It gives other people a chance to run at the front. And, if someone's had a bad qualifying session and they've had to recover from the back of the grid in race 1, they have an opportunity to, do well in race 2. And race 1 is a very short race. It's only 5 laps. But race 2 is the whole 25% of a Grand Prix. So it's going to be about 25 laps. It's going to be about 20 laps is my guess, So
Yeah.
and that involves a pit stop as well. So guys have to judge their pit stop time to perfection. If there's a safety car, things like that. So a lot of things are up in the air. That could mix the grid quite a bit, and could favor the lucky, as you could say.
Yeah.
Well, while we do this, I think it's best. I'll just run through the whole grid and just announce the teams and the teammates really. Because I think they're going to be paired up for the first time, so it'll be interesting to see how they work virtually.
Exactly. Yeah.
So driving for Mercedes AMG is Arya, Karthik, and Jonathan. For Scuderia Ferrari is Ron, Shankar, and Viresh. They go back a long way, so it's good that they've got paired together. Alfa Romeo Sauber, it's Abhishek Dwaraknath. We've seen him for the second weekend in a row now. He's an experienced esports player. He's paired up with Asian Formula 3 racing driver Akash Gowda, who's coming from Bangalore. For Racing Point, we've got Surya, another racing driver who's racing in India, paired up with Gaurav. For McLaren, we've got Tariq, who we know is a regular Formula 1 gamer who's been racing in Formula 1 2019, the gaming series for a while. Tariq is with Anjan. Anjan making his debut in esports here this weekend. For Red Bull, we've got Bala, another racing driver with Ashwin. Renault, we've got David Ryan, who's a racing driver as well, who took part in Leg 20 Esports last year. David's with Ankur. For Haas, we've got Rajdeep, Paul, and Brandon, your brother. So, and then we've got for AlphaTauri, we've got Aditya and Pradyumna Prakash. Pradyumna is actually a golfer making his esports debut here with us. And then for Williams, we've got Amit Kuti, who's done ever so well over the last couple of weekends, who's with a former national champion in Nishan Doriwala. So, you can see a good mix of grids, a good bunch of racing drivers with a lot of good gamers as well, which makes things very exciting.
Exactly, and yeah, something that we are doing differently is, of course, the teams, as you've just announced all the team drivers in their own teams. And, it is a very interesting lineup. We've got a bunch of drivers, as you said. We've also got golfers, and we've just got general gamers as well. And so it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes down, because you're not only driving for yourself now, you're also driving for the team. So you have to make sure that your team is also getting onto the top, not only you getting a good result yourself.
Exactly. I mean, end of the day, as a race driver, I'll tell you, it's every man for himself once they get on the track. whether it's virtually, whether it's actually 3 dimensions. But in the end, I guess they'll also want to finish on top in terms of the overall screen constructor standing as well. So I guess they'll have to work both ways.
Yeah, and of course, it's going to be. Obviously, we're doing the 2 tracks, which is China and Silverstone. And do you want to maybe go into the reasoning for Silverstone? Obviously, is Formula One's track, and so obviously not really Formula One's track rather, but Formula One originated from that area. So obviously Silverstone was one of our tracks that we chose. Obviously you've got Maggots and Beckett's, which is an extremely hard turn to nail and can go very wrong very fast if you're not on the right side or following the race line. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting, as well as China. Obviously with the growing coronavirus, we want to show our support for China, and we thought we'd have one of our races in China as well, as the drivers are coming in right now, and so it's going to be really interesting to see how the lineup goes. China is a very hard track as well. You have the first couple of turns, which is just a really tight right-hander, and if you get your line all wrong, you can really mess up your exit going out of, if I'm not wrong, turn 3. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how turn 1 unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, we basically chose because we've driven at both circuits, Aditya and I, and the thing is, when you put it in a game's perspective, because we have a mix here of controllers, of people who have joysticks and people who have the full steering wheel pedal systems. So just to keep it fair to both and try to make it as even as possible, both these circuits, what they do is they comply with long flowing corners, which aren't too compact, and you don't have too many change of directions where it's too close to one another. So it doesn't put you at too much of a disadvantage if you're using your joystick. So we thought of it that perspective as well. And there's a lot of overtaking opportunities. Both circuits do provide a lot of overtaking opportunities, and that's what we want. Right? We don't want something to be processional. We want some high action, and I think that's what's going to be delivered to us.
Yeah, and obviously, something that is really fascinating about F1 compared to a lot of other games is, and we did touch this in our test run, and a lot of people don't know, so I'm going to say it again. Obviously, F1 is not a simulator game. Obviously, it's trying to target all consumers. So you have people who do like simulation games playing F1, as well as people who just like racing in general. Coming in and racing, and obviously people who do like racing don't always have a steering wheel at their disposal, like we see with Arya. He's using controller, or we see with Kaboomsalot or Gaurav, he is also using controller. So we do see quite a bit of controller.
You've got two of them. You've got Pradyumna, you've got Anjan, you've got a mix of guys on joysticks really, but I know they've been practicing day and night, so working really hard to try and get on the pace here. So let's see how that works out.
Exactly, and so obviously we had to adjust to all of them and make sure that everyone was here. We're still waiting for 2 more drivers to come in, but we're almost pretty much set. Sorry, 1 more driver to come in. We're almost pretty much set to go for a one-shot qualifying, and then straight to the 5-lap race. From there, we will customize the grid. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the lineup unfolds, and a lot of controller players are here, and something about the controllers in F1 is that it's so easy actually to race in F1. I've used controller myself, and you can actually really keep up with these people that have a steering wheel. Obviously you don't have the feedback and feel of the track, but it's still very close racing. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these controller players perform.
Yeah, I'm just trying to have a look to see whether everyone's into the lobby and whether we're good to go. Dylan, have you been able to just get everyone into the lobby right now?
So we are actually just waiting for 1 more driver. His name is David Ryan. He's having just there's a little bit of a glitch in this game where sometimes it just keeps saying failed to join, and then eventually one of the invites will work. Yeah. So yeah.
I'm just going to run you through the 1-lap qualifying. Basically, you know what that is? That entire lap, your flying lap, and that's it, really. The guy's going to have to get the temps up, and mainly it's how they acclimatize the pressure, because they know they only have that one opportunity to get everything right. So, the smart guys will just drive at 90% and just put the lap together. Some would take. I mean, I want to see who takes the big risk and just goes all guns out and tries to hook it up, and who the winners and who the losers of this are going to be. You know, and when taking a risk and actually coming out on top or falling down. You know.
Yeah, and Aman, if just a moment, I'm just trying to figure out. Some drivers haven't actually selected their team and driver, so we just need to make sure that that happens. So yeah, if I
Dylan, you just focus on that and do that, get that going.
Yeah, so
and then we will join back again and take things forward from the qualifier.
Yeah, just give me a moment.
Yeah. Yeah, as we face a small delay, it's only just to get everything right, because you don't want to, we just want to cater to everyone, and we have nothing but time, don't we? I mean, since we're all at home right now with everything that's going on, but what's good is I think what we've seen is as part of Ultimate, what we've seen is the interest levels in terms of both the racing drivers and also the gamers, and what we've unraveled is there's such a big motorsporting gaming community in India, which is fantastic. And as organizers of the company, what we want to do is keep this growing on a weekend basis. Next weekend, we'll be hosting probably on a PC. What we do is every alternate weekend we alternate from a PC just to cater to a wider audience. And next weekend we'll be announcing again what the plans for next weekend. We'll be announcing early in the week the platform that we'll be running on, and I'm really excited because we have a great bunch of drivers coming in for that as well. Some top level guys, and I'm really excited for what the future of esports or this future of online racing beholds. Because I think there's something that we can take internationally and get some international competition going forward as well.
And you have to remember.
Hey Aditya, so we've got Aditya coming in now.
Yeah, I've been on listening to you for a while. I thought I'd let you have your moment.
Come on, give me some company, you mean?
Yeah.
Fine.
I think what's also really interesting is that a lot of these guys really just sitting at home, and it's crazy to see how many games they're playing through the day. Not Formula One, it's something else, and they're just constantly keeping themselves busy playing sim games. So
absolutely,
and that means that the competition over the last couple of weeks has just gone up a notch because of the amount of practice these guys are having over the last few weeks.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we didn't realize the level of online gaming was, and the amount. I mean, the number of guys that are sitting and playing at home, on a regular basis, really, and it's kind of blown my mind, really.
Yeah, and for those of you who are watching saying it's blank, yes, we are just getting everybody into the lobby, so we put a blank screen here while we set up the lobby. And yeah, so it may take us another 5 minutes. So sorry for those of you who are watching, but in the meantime, I'm guessing everyone is starting to tune in right now. We're just waiting for one more driver to jump into the lobby. That's David Ryan, and he's actually been very quick over the last few practice sessions over the last few days. So we really wouldn't want him to miss out. So Arman, Dylan, I'm not sure if you guys spoke about the format of qualifying.
So we did. We touched up on the format. We touched up on the teams, the drivers who have been teamed up. But I mean, since everyone has already heard about the format and who's driving the team, just thought we'll talk a little more about Ultimate and what our plans are, going forward, and how we started this and why we started this. So Ajay, you want to touch upon that since everyone is already tuned in to what we're going to be running today and tomorrow?
Yeah, well, I mean, why we started it, obviously, because this was something we always had planned to start in July. But I think the time came when this lockdown was in place and everyone was sitting at home, and we realized everybody is playing their games from home. And it's a good time to kind of capitalize on that. And what's more important is we want to start getting more involved in watching races online. There's very little live sport, and I think the kind of racing that we've been providing for the last couple of weeks is pretty much on par with live sport. Yes, it's not real life in terms of the graphics, but you've got real human beings sitting at home and controlling these cars from steering wheel simulator setups, which which if you think about it, is as close as it gets, and that's what makes it super interesting also to watch.
So it's close and doesn't have damage bills, so the parents are definitely happy.
Yeah, I think the drivers and their drivers' parents are quite happy. I think you and I have a lot of experience with damage bills and
Definitely.
a
A lot
little
of
tap
great,
here and there and a few €1,000
a lot
down
of
the drain.
stressful phone calls have gone that way. But yes, that's not the case here. I think we're more or less set to go. Just another couple of minutes waiting for David to come on board. Hopefully his PlayStation starts behaving itself and he's able to join the session. But like Aljat mentioned, he's been really quick. I think he's been on Formula One for quite a while now. A lot of drivers who are here who actually competed in X1 Esports series last year as well. So a lot of familiar faces. Some racing drivers joining in, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of we've got some former national champions and guys like Ishan Dodiwala. We've got Bala, who's currently racing the Formula 1600, Surya, and then you got Akash as well, who's racing in Asian Formula 3. Rohan, who's raced in the Formula LGB class. So a bunch of guys who've been around for a while. It's good for the gamers as well because okay, it may be virtual, but there's still on track experience that really counts and how they go about the weekend.
Yeah, it does. And it's great that we have a variety of circuits as well that we can choose from. Right now, of course, we're going with China and Silverstone, but as weeks go by, I think the idea is not to repeat circuits. Obviously, every different game that we go with, we're going to have different circuits just to make it more interesting for people to watch, more interesting for the drivers who are participating. In fact, we have repeat drivers from last week as well. And what's interesting is not that many repeat drivers. I think it's about 3-4 of them. There's Amit, who's back again. There's
Abhishek
Dwaraknath is back again. Amit is back again. So it shows that I think it's just two of them or maybe one more, and the rest of them are new again this week. So
Rohan as well. Rohan as well.
Back,
so we've got a few repeats, which is good. I mean, but the thing is, there are always 15 or 20 drivers who are ready to go, which means that, like you said earlier, different platforms of games have just more and more people taking part. Which in the coming weekends we'll be able to really unravel all of them.
Yeah, and I think eventually it's going to come down to one game. I'm pretty sure it's going to boil down to one game that everyone is really going to find their interest in. So it'll be.
This is like our beta phase.
Yeah. So for those of you who are tuned in, don't run away. If you want, you can grab a quick
beverage,
water, whatever you may like, a beverage. We have big fans of Arman sir who are watching as well on YouTube. For those of you who are asking what plans next week, we will be announcing on Monday, but we can tell you that it will be more PC oriented and not PlayStation next week. It just gives us the chance to switch things around.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on he's still having a couple of issues. We want to start our race with all 20 drivers in, but we do need to figure out, obviously we can't be, everyone is pretty much here. If it would have been a bigger deal if there was like 3 or 4 drivers missing, but because there's might be one driver missing, we might have to start and he might have to join in race 2. So yeah, we are still trying to figure out and trying our best to get him in, but yeah, in the next 5 minutes we should be starting.
Yes, we should be starting soon. If he doesn't get on in the next couple of minutes. So,
I mean, in the end, it's like motorsport, right? I mean, sometimes you get to the grid and you have a technical problem and you can't start. I mean, you have to make it for the that's sport, isn't it? I mean, even though it's virtual and we can try our best to delay the process, but in the end.
Yeah, I guess. So we will be starting very soon now. It's unfortunate that David's been having issues, but nonetheless, I think we're going to start any second now.
This is like I think when we talk a lot about esports, especially when you're racing from homes, I think this is probably some of the bigger issues that you will face is connectivity issues, and unfortunately that is inevitable. But either way, we are going to be starting soon as everyone starts to ready up.
Well, Dylan, in the real world, we face alternator issues. Here, they face connectivity issues. Somewhere the
Yeah.
spark's missing.
But yeah, pretty much everyone is ready to go. We just have one more driver to ready up, and we're pretty much ready to go. And so yeah, it's gonna be quite interesting to see how this is gonna play out. Now that unfortunately, obviously we're doing the team championship, but in every race there's always a car that may not work, or obviously there'll be a car that may not work. So it's gonna be like real life, pretty much, having one driver not being able to participate. But it's okay. Maybe he'll be able to join for. Most likely he'll be able to join for race 2. But yeah, we do just have to start no matter what. And yeah, so now that we are spectating, we're gonna be starting with one shot and seeing how these drivers perform. Aditya and Arman, what do you think is going to happen? What are your predictions going into one shot qualifying?
Well, that's a tough question. It's been really close so far in all the practice sessions. So it'll be interesting to see really who manages to pull it out. It's really tough to pull it all together on one lap. Even in real life, I mean, very few people can string that lap together. So it'll be interesting to see. There have been a few guys who have stood out over the practice session. I think particularly Tariq, Amit, etc. So let's see what they can do now.
And yeah, so I did want to mention that, and so as we are going into qualifying, we do see the grid going crazy, but we have Mercurial in first place right now, and we are having a strict corner cutting is on strict, so obviously they can't go off the track, and because otherwise their lap will become invalidated. So people do have to be very careful. And that itself is going to add a lot of pressure, that they can't go off the track, especially with controller players. It's very hard to be precise, so there is going to be a lot of pressure, but let's see how this unfolds.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it as realistic as possible, and you don't want them to be running all over the place and just cutting through corners and making time. As you can see, the Williams, they're running a little wide. Hopefully that doesn't affect his lap or he doesn't get penalized, but yeah, one lap, it puts a lot of stress on the drivers, and they just got to keep their nerves to themselves. And like I said, 90% every corner, 15 corners, you got a lap going.
Yeah. So as you can see, we still got Mercurial in front, in the lead right now. He's actually been in the lead pretty much a whole lap. But Amit in third right now, and
it's just the first lap, Dylan. So it's like it's a one shot qualifying. So all of them are on their flying lap. I think we'll only get to know the results as soon as the lap is done. So
yeah,
exactly.
Let's see how that goes. So Williams is coming down to the end of the lap, so I'm guessing he's going to finish.
He's hit the bollard on the inside.
131. That is a huge and a very good
lap. Yeah.
That is a very good lap. As we can see, some people have disqualified, or just one person rather is disqualified, and yeah, that's a very, very good lap. We've obviously got Amit in second right now. As you can see, he's in the Williams. Probably something you don't see every day, the Williams on top. But it's, we still got a huge gap. Mercurial or Tariq is doing extremely well in this race. Obviously, you can see a very nice lineup. We have Tariq in first, Amit in second.
Yeah, so to run through it, we've got a McLaren with Tariq in first. We've got Amit in second. I mean, these two guys have been on top right through, hasn't it? But what's interesting is I didn't expect a 4:10 gap between the two. I mean, we've got Ashwin in the Red Bull after that in 31.8. Again, 3 guys in 31. That's really quick. We got the first of the Mercedes there. I'm not sure whether that's Arya or Jonathan. And then we've got a Racing Point again in the next Mercedes, going down to a Haas. The 2 Toro Rosso, Pradyumna there, who's only 1.9 off, and he's on joystick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can see it's quite spread out. But I think the racing is going to be more interesting with the DRS, especially on that long 1.2 kilometer straight. Expect a lot of overtaking there.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got that extremely long straight, and it comes straight down into a just straight down into a pretty much hairpin.
It comes into a first gear hairpin, so braking really hard and slowing the car right down. A lot of guys overshoot and run pretty wide there, or just dive bomb and try to make a move and get a little greedy. So it's gonna be quite exciting. There's a lot of guys that do the undercut as well. Okay, let's wait for the 5 lights now.
And it is lights out, and everyone is ready to go. Let's see what is going on here. We have Tariq in first.
And Amit, both are cleanly off. Tariq's going defensive there into the first one. Amit gives a small tap. Is he going to try going around the outside, or is he just going to play it safe?
We do see a 2-second time penalty with Abi.
The Racing Point on third had a collision with Amit and runs wide. I think he going into half spin and lost a lot of time. That's unfortunate. But the top 2 coming clean. They've got a bit of a gap to the Red Bull in third. Going down to this downhill hairpin. If you can just try and look and further back what's going on. But the top 2 seem pretty safe right now.
So yeah, obviously anything can happen, and that now that we have damage, there are very, very rare but very occasional. But you do have sometimes where the engine does slow down, and there are a little bit of engine problems. It is very rare, of course, as I've said, especially with damage reduced. It's a very anything can happen until the end of the race. Obviously, it's a stint. Only a 5-lap stint, and it's going to be extremely
it's a proper
fast.
sprint race. It's a proper sprint race, and as you can see, you come in on this long camber corner, which it's pretty much you're just going up the gears, and by the time you come to the stadium on 6th, and like I said, there's 1.2 kilometers straight. You can see the Red Bull diving and trying to make a move on Amit. Let's see if he can pull it off. If the camera just focuses on that corner, and he's run a bit wide there, so Amit could do the undercut and come back in a second. But for now, Tariq runs really wide on the exit there. I would like to see what the stewards think of that in the game, and whether they issue a penalty or not, or they just give him a warning. But apart from that, he looks like he's in dominant form right now. But again, it's all about tire wear. Let's see what happens, whether he can manage for those 5 laps or not. Looking further down the grid, couple of guys who we thought might be strong, like Gauda is struggling. He's fallen back at the start. Anjan seems to have made up a lot of places. He's running in the top 10. Pradyumna in 7th. And it's quite a mixed grid. I wonder where Rohan's in 14th. I wonder what happened there. Whether he's just struggling for a little bit of pace. Because I expected him to be up front really, because he's quite strong in this game.
And yeah, actually, as I say that, we actually see the Mercedes all the way from 6th place going all the way down to 19th. I think there has been a crash or some contact, but I think that is pretty much a race over from Arya, as there is no safety car in this, so seems like he's going to be starting 19th in the grid for race 2.
Yeah, that's right. Again, if Arya's gone back to the pits, and he's obviously had a big collision, and then it's going to be. But remember, the second race is a lot longer. It's got 25% of the Grand Prix, so you got about it's a 25-minute race, and which includes the pit stop, right? So there's a lot of things that can happen there. You take a gamble on the tires, you pit early, go for a long run. I mean, so the strategy is really key there, and we'll see what they can do. Hopefully, David can join us in that as well. Unfortunately, another technical glitch for Abhishek Varna, struggling with connectivity, like Hari did last weekend. So he's got disconnected as well, but hopefully he can join us back for race 2. Remember, for race 2, you have reverse grid. So the top 8 is a reverse grid from the results of race 1. So, the top 10, I think they're just going to be trying to push as much and try to maintain themselves.
Yeah, exactly, and as I've said, Abhishek is...
You see the second McLaren here being bullied by the Ferraris. He was in a Ferrari sandwich, but both the Ferraris have got past. That's Viresh and Rohan really squeezing their way and working as a team here with the second McLaren. Going to turn 1, they were behind him, and now coming out of turn 3, they were both ahead, and they're fighting against themselves. I'm not sure who's who there, but let's see if they can get going and move forward and move up the field.
So yeah, we can see Rohan Shankar has made up a bunch of positions, and he's looking really, really strong on his race pace, especially in China. This is a very hard track, and really, really is expected a lot from your tires as well. So obviously, we can see both the Ferraris running wide, but they're definitely on a good strategy. They're trying. There's some contact from the Ferrari. As I say, there's good strategy.
I think that was Viresh who went into half a spin there. I mean, I know they're best of friends as well, so I'm sure there's a lot of There's a lot of cursing going on in the PS chat that they've got going on. But let's see. Hopefully they settle down. Behind them, we can look at Alfa Toro Rosso and McLaren going side by side as well, coming out of the long camber corner. But I think the McLaren came out ahead. So quite a lot of battles going on up and down the midfield.
So yeah, as I said, as you've also said, like coming down that straight into that hairpin, first gear hairpin, you have to be extremely careful that you don't overshoot, and we did see Rohan Shankar there overshooting. But I think that little half spin has put Viresh in a lot of trouble, because now Rajdeep is right behind him. And this is going to be an extremely tough for Viresh to keep Rajdeep behind, especially that close. So Rohan Shankar's got to pull away now, otherwise he's also probably going to be in trouble.
So the guys on the penultimate lap right now, I think the leaders are quite safe, if I'm not wrong. We've got Tariq in the lead, Amit in second, is within a second of him. So he's in the DRS zone. Will he be able to reel him in this lap and use the DRS on that straight to try and make a move? Because he's actually made up a lot of time the last couple of laps. So if we can get the broadcaster to go to the first two and try and focus on the first two, because they seem quite close right now, and see if anything goes on there.
So yeah, as you can see, Amit has got DRS and he's gonna try and get that overtake. He's inching ever so closely. Obviously, from where I can see, he's got a little bit of lockup.
Tariq runs a little wide, but yeah, it's really close with them entering into coming down to the final corner.
And they're gonna have DRS. Amit is gonna have DRS here as well. Will this be a good corner? He's setting fast lap after fast lap, and he's just so much closer now to Tariq. Tariq is under so much trouble, right behind him, and both of them are on that racing line, of course. So, and there's still a little bit of lockup from Amit, and we see Viresh getting he's had contact with Rajdeep there, and that puts Viresh down into 12th. We unfortunately missed that.
Remember this is a 5.5 kilometer circuit, so a lot of corners, are about 15 or 16 corners,
Yeah.
So Amit's still got Amit's main opportunity is going to come on that long straight, like I told you, if Tariq does not make a mistake. So he's just got to stay within that gap, so he's basically played it out. The first couple of laps, he just let his tires, come to temperatures, get his flow going, and now he's really putting on piling on the pressure.
Exactly, and sorry to interrupt you there. Sorry to interrupt you there, Amit, but this is the last lap, so Amit, I'm sure, is playing it extremely safe and making sure he's going to get his DRS on the straight. This seems to be the chance for Amit to overtake, and as everyone is on default setup, that means that Amit, if he has the ERS, which it looks like he just about has enough.
He does. You saw his finger going in the button there, and he's coming. Is he going to make that move? Coming into the braking zone.
And they've locked up.
Tariq runs a bit wide, so Amit is going to let him come back. So it looks like Tariq's got this covered. If he does not make a mistake, he can up and do an undercut to the last corner.
No.
He runs wide. Okay.
Unfortunate.
It looks like Tariq got this win.
Tariq did whatever he could.
Really close. Yeah.
So we can see actually one of the Mercedes coming in fourth place. Jonathan up in fourth. Obviously, we had unfortunate. Arya was unfortunately probably came into contact that put him all the way in last. So obviously for him that's race 2 gonna be done, but BG running extremely right, Brandon's running extremely right, starting 8th. So that means that Brandon will be starting first for the next race. So obviously he's gonna be under a lot of pressure for sure, making sure that he keeps the lead and see how he can do.
Yeah. As you can see, I mean, there's some late moves there, a little bit of swerving left and right under braking, but nevertheless, it was a really close race. Great to see bad right up and down the field. But I mean, the first 3 really pulled away from the rest. But then again, we saw like big comebacks from guys like Rohan Shankar and Viresh. Viresh unfortunately got another incident and fell back a bit. But again, I think Rohan just missed out on the top 8, where Brandon, like you said, has got the top 8, so he starts from pole. And I think you need to go give him some tips there, Dylan. Just keep his nerves calm.
Obviously, yes, he's going to be under a lot of pressure, and he is. From my experience, and as he is my brother, obviously I don't want to say anything bad about him, but he is a little bit slow off the pace, especially from the leaders, so it's going to be a lot of pressure for him to keep those drivers behind. As I take note of the top 8 drivers, if we can get Aditya here, you guys can have a conversation on the race debrief, and also at the lobby.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. What a race that was! I was on the edge of my seat. Oh man, I was jumping up and down. That move. I thought Amit would pull it off, but I think Tariq was just about smart enough to close that gap. But as you see them celebrating their podium, one of the guys are doing the same back home in the room.
Yeah, that was a really exciting race. I mean, it had me screaming there for a while. I mean, like I said, there's a little bit of wheel-to-wheel banging. There was action everywhere. Yeah, I mean, beginning of the race, it looked quite settled and looked quite good, like as if they had all settled into a similar pace. But then suddenly it all picked up with 2 laps to go.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting actually now looking at Amit's pace and Tariq's pace, looking at the guys battling in the midfield, what the reverse grid is going to bring out for us to see, because you had Brandon and Axel who had a great battle there. One of the drivers obviously not too happy about it, but now they are going to be on the front row. So it's going to be interesting to see. The first corner is probably going to be a bit chaotic because Shanghai is that long right-hander that tightens.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough one. Can't really say who's going to win the next one because it's a long race.
Yeah, I mean, with a pit stop, and so let's see who can get the strategy right. But also, like you talk about that first corner, coming through that, even that first race, the Racing Point just got it wrong, and I think he and Amit touched, and the Racing Point was the one who was left behind really. So they got to realize that the race is not over in that first couple of corners.
Yeah, you've got to keep it clean, and it was good to see guys like Amit and Tariq up front keeping it clean. A lot of close battles in the back, like the one we saw between Rohan and Viresh as well, and that makes for great racing. And I think the guys who have been doing a bit of extra bumping should kind of keep that in mind, because then
you got to finish first. Right, so we're just waiting now. Once we set the grid, remember race 2 is the top 8 is a reverse grid of the results of race 1. So we're just setting them in place, and then we'll be ready to go in a couple of minutes. I wonder if there were any penalties from race 1 that the game had issued. Ajay, do you notice anything?
None that I saw. We saw a couple of times where people went a bit wide and exceeded track limits, but I think they may have got a warning for that on their screen. But it's just a 5-lap race, so I'm pretty sure people didn't exceed track limits that much. I think you've got to do it 3 or more times. You get warnings for the first 3 times, post which you could probably get a drive-through penalty. So
yeah, trust me, I know.
Race, so, yeah, you know. we all know.
But yeah, I mean, in a race, it's 3 times, and then you get a warning, and then you get a penalty after that. But yeah. But that's the thing.
The warning flag was actually quite interesting. If you remember the controversy last year in Formula 1 when they showed the warning flag, and everybody who watched Formula 1 suddenly was like, "What is this black and white flag? How can they show that?" But you and I, we've done races where we see black and white flags every time. So I really don't know why that became so controversial.
Yeah, I guess because for the longest time in Formula 1 they hadn't shown it, and and also last year we saw such close racing, and that they eventually brought it out, But I mean, also there was a change in race director, so I think the way he ran it was a little different, I guess, from all these years. But nevertheless, it needs to be shown every time there's an issue, because that's the perfect warning, isn't it? I mean, we've seen it plenty.
It is true. I mean, it's better to get a warning than to get a penalty straight away, because that just ruins the race.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure these guys were warned there. We've got more people joining in. We've got Glenn, who's smiling. I think he enjoyed watching that race as well, and he's also an esports avid online gamer. Does a lot of Gran Turismo, from what I know, and I'm pretty sure he would have loved to be there battling with Tariq and Amit up front.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think Glenn was there, part of our X1 esports last year as well, and a lot of these guys who we met last year, who have logged in over the last 2 weeks, and hopefully Glenn comes in when in the future if we run games that he's familiar with, and and that is our target, to cater to all platforms really.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows? Maybe one day we'll see people playing FIFA on our stream. Never
Never
know.
say never, right?
Never say never. Um, but yeah, the racing is definitely picking up. You and I have both been speaking to people of late, and I think everybody's quite keen to see where this goes with esports, particularly now that people are uh, kind of locked in, not just gamers, but everybody who's watching as well. So we all need some kind of entertainment, don't we?
We do definitely, and I think this is the safest way to entertain yourself in terms of the motorsporting sector. Even at this point, that's the beauty of motorsports. Like yes, it's an elite sport and so expensive, but also it's so simplified as well, right? In these troubled times, you could just be sitting at home like we are and have a proper series that's going on. Uh,
Yeah,
where some
absolutely, and it's
yeah,
so cost effective. I think all the gamers will also agree with that. It's what they love doing in their downtime.
yeah.
Now that everybody's got a lot of downtime. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now ready for race two. And for those of you who just tuned in, race two is a reverse grid of the top eight in race one, which means we've got Brandon on pole, we've got Axel in second, and we've got Amit and Tariq who will be seventh and eighth. So they've got some ground to make. We saw that they were streaks ahead of the rest of the field in the first race. But don't forget, we also had Ashwin, who was pretty quick, Ashwin Lapani. And I think he's starting ahead of them, which means he's got a little bit of an advantage.
Okay, so we've actually done the grid now, and we are pretty much ready to go. Obviously, it does take a little bit of time to make the custom grid, but we're pretty much ready to go. Done the grid, and obviously, it's unfortunate for some of the drivers, but it's okay. Either way, we do see some controversial topics happening in the WhatsApp group right now with the drivers after a lot of damage, but we do need them to keep their cool and use that energy in the track and use it to gain positions instead of doing anything else. So let's see. We've got 25%
Yeah, I mean,
race now.
most importantly, I mean, there's always going to be some complaining, and if someone's not going to be happy, but I think they just got to put their head down. That they got another long race to go, which is more, and they can focus on the WhatsApp groups later, I guess.
It's crazy that you can get straight away onto WhatsApp after a race without really having to catch your breath.
Yeah.
You and I are both used to having to catch our breath and
exactly.
Hydrate ourselves.
Get
WhatsApp even.
Get our nerves going, and then start expressing our emotions really. Whereas here, it's
so I do
straight away back.
Something I always obviously you guys are somewhat my mentors. I'm also trying to get into racing myself, and whenever I go on YouTube, I can never find your races. Have you guys actually ever raced together? I actually do not know that.
Just a couple of times in an Indian championship, we were both invited to participate. It was good fun.
Yeah.
But otherwise, internationally, no, I don't think so.
Internationally,
We've been on the same weekends, but
yeah, internationally, no, because again, our career paths went in two different directions. But like I just said, we've been on the same weekend roster. I think we only started together in the national karting championship. That's the first and last time we raced together. Probably.
Oh, what has happened here?
Alright, I think there's a little technical glitch.
Yeah, I think the game has switched to rain for some reason. We are going to have to restart the session then. That is a weird glitch to have happened.
That is a weird glitch. I mean, it's raining now, so I think the drivers got to their wet tires.
Can they not just go wet?
I mean, in real life, we don't ask the gods, is it going to be a wet race or dry race, because they just
I'm sorry.
when they feel like.
I'm sorry. I can't hold a straight face here because even in a game, the gods are playing their part.
So alright, so yeah, we are gonna restart the race here, shall we restart and get into a clear weather race? And yeah, let's just do that real quick.
For people who are just tuning in now, sorry we're running a little late. We've had a few technical glitches, but that's just part of electronics, I guess. Uh, so we're just restarting, and just setting the grid because post race one, the results of race one is the starting order for race two, but there's a top eight reverse grid. So we're just going to set that up and get going again. So just bear with us for a couple of minutes, and we'll be live again.
Yeah, the race decided to throw in some rain. The game decided to throw in some rain, which would have been interesting. I think after this, we've got to tell all the drivers if you're surprised with rain, just take it in your stride because in real life, you never know when it's going to rain sometimes.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting if it was raining.
Yeah, but Dylan, you're a gamer. It's something that you don't like, but it's just something you've got to deal with sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you have the option to switch it to dynamic weather, so you never know when it's going to rain. Obviously, you can be in qualifying, it'll be nice and sunny, and then going into the race, it'll be extremely wet. And so, yeah, it is very interesting. And yes, wet weather does affect the race a lot. We would have seen a lot of spins, especially going up into the first turn. But otherwise, it is usually these cars just have tremendous downforce, and these cars usually just are a dream to handle in the rain as well, compared to a lot of other cars.
Yeah, yeah. So do we have an ETA for the race to start? All right. All right, just get. All right, so just get all the drivers, get online, and we'll be good to go.
What's going on? No, but tell them on the group to get out of it.
So yeah, obviously we are experiencing quite a bit of technical difficulties, but as we are getting all the drivers in and getting the grid ready, we can get an idea of unfortunately that was a little weird that the rain had come down, and the rain gods, of course, had come down on us unexpected, especially for the organizers, come in unexpected for us as well. So yeah, it would have been an extremely interesting race, but obviously we have been training on dry weather, and we did say it was dry weather, so we will restart the session and make sure that everything is set up. As the drivers are coming in, we do have to just set up the grid, and then we'll be ready to go. If Aditya is here, I'm not sure exactly if he's here or not, as well as you, Aman.
Yeah, we're here. We're just waiting for everyone to come online, and join the session so we can go live. So again, apologies. Just bear with us. Sometimes technology does give us a little backhander.
Yeah, and of course, going into race 2, which is a 25% race, it's going to be extremely different because you can't give your 100% for the whole race, because quite frankly it would be really hard, especially with tire wear being there, and also you have that mandatory pit stop where you have to switch to a slower tire or a faster tire. So it is going to be extremely interesting to see what strategies people go on. I think, if I'm not wrong, the top 10 can only be on softs, starting the grid, and the other top 10 can choose whatever tire they like to be on. But of course, every tire there has to be 2 different tire compounds in the race, otherwise they will get disqualified. Okay, so obviously, as we wait for the drivers to come into the grid, because obviously we need to customize the grid for the reverse grid for the top eight. What are your predictions going into race two? Arman, obviously, as I've said, we've had a huge. We have strategies now. Obviously, top five. Sorry, lap. 5 lap race is extremely. It's pretty much just you send it those 5 laps, and if you get damage, you get damage that will affect your race, or you get a good position. So now we have race strategy because we're going into a I think, if I'm not wrong, it's like a 14 or 15 lap race. What are your predictions going on? Who do you think is going to be on the better strategy? Or what do you think the better strategy is? Obviously, with the rain there, it would have been a different strategy because now it could have turned into dry weather throughout through the end of the race. So what are your predictions going into this now?
Honestly, just automatic because it's the first time I'm seeing a lot of them drive, and it's a reverse grid as well. If if we had continued in the wet, I mean, obviously you would have realized in the first couple of laps who's comfortable and who's not. Secondly, with the winner starting in in the middle of the pack, it'll be interesting to see whether they're just strong up front or whether they're strong racing drivers as well and can actually plan and manage the race and just come through the field. So these all these things were just left up in the air for us because again we're just getting to see them see each person drive and compete and try to understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. But it's a long race. Again, entire compound is each tire compound is key, so it's how they plan their strategies. And I'm going with an open mind to see. I mean, and it's only once the checker flag drops, I'll know who stands on what ground. So tomorrow I'll be able to give you a better answer for that. Who? Who?
Is the grid ready?
Waiting for Tariq. David's anyway at the back. So it's fine.
It says they're saying Tariq is not racing.
Who said?
That's what they're saying on the group.
No, that's Aditya who said he's off. Oh.
Two of them said he's off, not racing. Two of them said he's off, not racing.
Only Aditya.
Man, screw this F1.
No.
Are we on? Is the commentary on?
Oh.
Yeah, sorry for that. We had the sound off for a sec, but now the sound is back on, and yeah, we're getting ready to go. Obviously, as I was saying, Brandon is still in first as he was 8th in the last race. So obviously, Axel making a move down on him, but unsuccessful. That means Brandon gets to go ahead. We see a 5-second penalty for severe.
We see our first retirement as well. User number ISD 2401 has retired. I think that was there was a car that had an incident on the starting grid. Really.
Oh, we actually see the
Unfortunately.
safety car out.
That
We have
was
the safety car out, so that means Brandon is still in first, and Brandon's holding the leadership as
Yep.
we had the safety car. We had the safety car enabled for this race, obviously, because we want the drivers to catch up. And we completely forgot about that. As the safety car is out now, that means the strategies have changed. Because now people have the choice of, okay, should I go on into the fresh tires now, or should I wait for a little bit and get
Basically,
going after?
they've got 13 laps left. They can ideally they would do the pit stop now, get on a set of tires, and just get into a rhythm. Really, that would be the ideal cause. But again, some of the guys in the back who want to come front and maybe try and pull a gap a bit later. But it depends on how long the safety car is going to be out for.
Yeah, so
You
we
see
see quite a
more.
few people going into the pits right now, actually. And as I've said, Arya started all the way in 18th, now in 7th, so obviously, or now in 8th right now. I think he might get that position back as obviously the safety car's out. So yeah.
But I have to say that's an interesting decision to go to the pits because it's one pit stop. You've got Abhishek now in the pits. You've got the Wildest Monk in the pits. You've got Phoenix Matrix in the pits.
You've got Akash in the pits. You've got Abhishek in the pits. You've got
and it's a one pit stop race. So after this, they don't need to stop. Whereas the guys in front who are behind the safety car, they need to stop. So they're going to lose a lot. While these guys who are in the pit right now are going to catch up to the back of the field. So that was a really smart move by them. And the pit lane exit is green, which means perfectly smartly done by all these guys who went in the pit.
You see the Alfa Romeo getting a nose change. That might take a little time, but now it's a perfect opportunity since the safety car's out. Everyone's under limited speed limit. And rightly you said. I mean, if I was driving right now, I would make that pit stop because this is your golden gift card, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember this happening to me in Shanghai a couple of years ago where we were fighting for championship and the virtual safety car came out.
Right.
And even though the team said, no, don't come in the pits, now come in on the next lap, we just did it. We just went in because while everybody's moving around the track at a slow pace, 80 or 90 kilometers, you're in the pits getting your work done, getting your driver change done, so you're not losing any time. But and we actually ended up winning that race. So the team was disappointed that we didn't listen to them, but in the end, they were happy that we won. So, and these guys are smart to do that because they saw that they can now catch up, and you can see Abhishek's already at the back of the field. He's done his pit stop and he's at the back of the field.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It happened to me as well during the street race in KL. The safety car come out, and I was coming towards the pit entry. My teammate wasn't even ready at the time, but I dived in because we weren't going to make it the next time around. It's going to go green. So even though he wasn't ready, but even though we lost a little bit of time in the pits, we gained a lot on the surface.
Oh, we see someone going off on the safety car. What is going on here?
Who was that? He's just gone off on the safety car. Yeah, I think that was Axel. Did he get nudged from behind?
Yeah, it looks like he got nudged from behind.
Was it Pradyumna who nudged him? It does look like that. Let's just take another look at that.
Was it?
Yeah, Axel has been pulled off, but he gets
was a nudge by Pradyumna behind the safety car.
Little brain fail. I mean, really, amateur stuff. Pradyumna, I think just got started to relax under the safety car and didn't really get his braking distance right, or just try to accelerate too quickly.
And the weird part is he hasn't gotten a penalty for that. So the
not yet. But again, the stewards will look at it, and maybe there's a post-race penalty that will push.
Yeah, so obviously something in this game that happens, especially with ghosting on, is sometimes the game mixes up, especially when you're having internet connection issues, and you can actually ghost through a player, but the other player will still get contact, and you won't get a penalty for it. So obviously, if that has been the case, that means Pradyumna has gotten away with it, and he has gained a position and also not gotten a penalty. So obviously we will have to look at that post race and see what went wrong and what happened. But nonetheless, we do see Axel actually getting. We're seeing a lot of people.
There was a 5-second penalty being issued. I think I just saw it down in race control.
Yeah, so we did see Rohan Shankar actually get a
safety car in this lap as well.
Yeah, we see the lights off, safety car in this lap. Let's see them all bunch up, and it's all under Brandon now. So he's under control. He's got control of this. Let's see what he does.
So yeah, now obviously he probably thought he got away with it, but now he is under a lot of pressure again because this is basically a rolling start. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting. We see a lot of people getting really, really close, and we do see a lot of penalties being issued. So it's going to be really interesting. Like right now, we see David, he got 5-second penalty for corner cutting. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. We see someone dropping down the order. That's Brandon. He's actually gone into the pits. He's decided to pit on the last lap, and let's see what strategy he goes on for that. But we see the race restart now, and we see the people in the first. Pradumya has gotten a really, really good.
We see the AlphaTauri, the Toro Rosso is taking the lead. He's going to turn 2 now.
Yeah, so
he's taking the lead. He's coming out. He's built up a side gap as well.
So I did actually want to mention that we do see the Haas is actually on top. Brandon's actually gone into the pits right now. So obviously, I don't know exactly what strategy is on, especially with the safety car disabled. But he is only 14 seconds behind, which means that when everyone comes into the pits, he will be on top. 11 seconds.
No, I think you're mistaken. You've got to remember, Dylan, that Abhishek, the Wildest Monk, Phoenix Matrix, Delta Gowda, these guys have all pitted already. They don't need to pit again. So they've done their mandatory pit stop. So Brandon's going to have a tough time trying to catch up with these guys.
That's true. Oh yeah, we see a lot of people in the bottom of the grid have already done their stops. So 10th and below, all these people have already done their stops. So yeah, the top 9 will go for the stops soon, and that means that Brandon will be, if I'm not wrong, will be in 7th place if he doesn't get any overtakes done. So I'm not exactly sure what strategy he was on, but
there's a lot of weaving going on the straight. I mean, they're trying to break the draft with the DRS here, but he's managed to do it. Pradyumna is really trying to be defensive and quite aggressive going there. But remember, he's playing with a joystick, so not bad for a joystick player against quite a bunch of gamers who are on the steering wheels.
Yeah, and to see him go through that long corner so smooth with a joystick, it's unbelievable. There's no choppy movements. You see that in shorter corners like this, but the long corners.
So yeah, as we are saying right now, we see Brandon go up the grid because 3 people have actually gone into the pits. Has there been a huge... we see some yellow flags in the Sector 1 and Sector 2. So there's obviously been some crashes that have been out. So there's people going for 2 stops now. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. We see Amit up in 3rd place, Rajdeep now in 1st. He's actually taken the lead from the Toro Rosso. So yeah, it's looking like a very action-packed weekend. We had the safety car out once. Hopefully we won't have to see it again, but it's looking, besides the safety car, it's looking pretty clean with the top 5. And we also forgot to mention we also see Viresh, one of the Ferraris, up into 4th place now, and so yeah, it's extremely cool to see all these gamers and racers. It's a very mixed grid now. It's not like especially in Assetto Corsa.
Sorry, let me just cut you off there. Actually, the Haas got lead because the Toro Rosso made a mistake. He went across the grass.
Oh yeah,
and finally made a mistake there. So yeah.
So sorry to interrupt as well. I do want to mention that Rajdeep does have a 5-second penalty. From what I can remember, I think he might have more penalties. I'm not going to make any accusations on that. So it's going to be really hard because I don't think Prads has actually got a penalty, especially for spinning axle out. I don't think he got a penalty for that. So obviously he needs to pull away from Prads right now. Otherwise he's going to get a... he's going to inherit that position. And also we see Amit who got tangled in with the midfield. He was all the way in the back. Obviously that safety car was a absolute dream for the people who had contact, because now they have an opportunity to get back up. We still see Brandon in 12th place. From the race start he was in 1st, but he decided to pit as the safety car was coming in. So yeah, so we're seeing a lot of different strategies going on, and obviously everyone's got to make that mandatory pit stop. So that means there's 4 other drivers that need to make their pit stop, otherwise they will get disqualified. And so yeah, obviously we're still seeing some drivers.
If you look at like 5th onwards, So we've got Anjan's the last of the runners who hasn't made a pit stop. And fifth onwards is Iron Veron, basically. I'm not sure who that is.
It's Jonathan, actually. So
Jonathan's really going to inherit the lead, really, and he's followed by Akash Gowda. So that's the gamer versus the racing driver there. Then the wireless monk, that is little thing. Just let me know who that is. Who's going to inherit third place. I think these guys are going to be the real winners. You know, the ones who really went and dived pits on that first lap of the safety car. I think, yeah, I guess they're the biggest winners or biggest gainers of this lot, just taking it so far in the race.
Exactly, and that means Jonathan basically has to not make a mistake, and he will take that first place. And he obviously was not starting in the front, so it's going to be an impressive performance for him. And he definitely went on the right strategy and did the right moves, especially under that safety cars. And he's pretty much put himself in first place from the start without anyone knowing it. So it's going to be really interesting to see him gain up. And obviously, the Mercedes is a pretty strong team. It's a pretty even team as well. We see Arya all the way in the bottom, and we see Jonathan up on top, who's gonna pretty much inherit, as Amit is the only one who's not made a pit stop. So that means, Jonathan takes the lead.
I'm not sure what I missed with Abhishek Dwarkanath, who's fallen back quite a bit, because he should have been fairly high up at this stage.
Yeah, and I mean, he did start in the back of the grid as well, so it was very hard to keep up with, especially with that safety car, because we did see a bunch of people getting penalties. And if I'm not wrong, speaking of penalties, if Jonathan has a penalty, he could be under a lot of trouble if he doesn't pull away from Delta. Obviously, he is right now. He's gone from 5 seconds to 6 seconds in one lap, so obviously he's gained a second in one lap. So yeah, he seems pretty much in the clear right now, but he needs to make sure that he keeps that 5 second gap, or how many ever penalties he has. He needs to make sure that he has he's steered clear of that, because if not, he is not going to get that first place. Amit has still not come into the pit, so Amit seems to maybe on a strategy to really stress out his tires and put the most potential out of the tires as possible. And so
no,
obviously,
I think I have a feeling I know what Amit's strategy is here. He knows he's got the pace. What he's trying to do is to pull a bit of a gap. So when he does make his pit stop, eventually he does come out in front, which is what he's trying to do. So hopefully for him, he'd be able to do it. But the guys behind know that this is what he's doing. And I think it's important for the guys in second and third to keep their pace up. So when Amit does make his pit stop, they can jump him.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how. I'm not sure how long. Usually, the pit stop takes about total in and out time takes about 22, 23 seconds. That's in real term racing, but I'm not sure how long it really takes. The game so is about. I think he should be. He should be. I'm not sure. Really, I don't know where to think that is.
So let me fill you in there. So right now, the average pit stop takes about 22 seconds, depending on the pit lane and how big it is. Oh, we see some contact, and the Renault trying to make a move on the Alpha, but I don't think that was successful, as he did push him extremely wide. But both of them seem to have gotten away with it with no damage. So yeah. We do see Amit. Yeah, Amit has come into the pits now. Let's see how far he's gotten. It still seems like he's gone into 5th place, which seems pretty good and pretty solid. He did pull away as much as possible, and Amit might.
There's a move on the Renault there, and they both run wide. I told you, he's barged in. They run wide, but he's let the Alfa Romeo take its place again.
I think your stream's a bit delayed. You're running a little bit behind us. You were just watching the hairpin. The race is actually now on turn 4.
Oh, we see someone going wide on the Haas.
Yeah, we just saw someone going wide. I think the battle's eating up out in front now.
Yeah, as we see, Rajdeep is trying to make a move, but Amit has made the move back. Rajdeep is under a lot of trouble. Amit is trying really hard to gain. And Jonathan seems to really be pulling away, but Amit is just cutting through the grid like it's nothing right now, coming in, taking Rajdeep, passing Rajdeep rather, and going for the Renault next.
We look at the Renault being really defensive there, going to slow. Actually, the driver with Renault actually driven here quite a lot, might add. and as you mentioned, he really likes driving, using this car as well, Dylan. I think that was David. Is that David in the Renault there?
That is actually not David in the Renault. That is actually the Wildest Monk. David is actually in 10th place right now.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think something has happened to Brandon. I think he might have spun out. Amit has gotten a 3-second time penalty. That is going to be unfortunate for him because that can really affect his race for corner cutting. So, yeah, this is going to be extremely interesting. Amit is going to have to pull away. The only person behind him now is Delta Gauda. And obviously, Delta Gauda doesn't have DRS. So, Amit pretty much takes that place, and we see that right now going up into the first turn. Amit has gone up into second place, but he is 10 seconds behind with a 3-second penalty. So Amit has got to pull really, really hard. Only 4 laps left, and Jonathan basically doesn't have to make a mistake. And to continue on, we see actually Viresh, we saw him in 7th place, but now, we see some huge contact going on. What has happened here? We see the Renault getting tangled. The Renault has gone off. Unfortunate.
That was Ankur. I think that was Ankur, if I'm not wrong.
What has gone wrong there?
I think it was a mistake he made himself. I think the car in front braked and he tried to avoid it, and then he ended up going wide.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
We are seeing a lot of action with the top runners, and it's very interesting to see. We see Rajdeep trying to make a move on Delta Gauda, trying to get that. We see the Toro Rosso just right behind, almost having contact. Having to brake really late.
There's a lot going on between third place all the way down to.
Everyone's fighting for that third place.
Everyone's fighting for that third place. It's really.
But as we said, this Formula 1 is a lot about the strategy. You have to be on the better strategy because that can mean the difference between you winning or not. We see a little bit of contact between the Alpha and the Haas. That means the Alpha has got a little bit of damage, but the Haas has gotten away with it with nothing. So this is going to be really interesting going up into the last turn, starting the 11th of 14 laps. We see Amit setting really fast times, trying to get that extra point in. But yeah, we see quite a bit of racing, some really hard racing going on in Formula 1. Not something you see a lot in actual Formula 1 and real racing in general. This is a lot of action.
Dylan, what did you just do there? Did you just try to diss real racing?
Yeah,
no.
You know what precisely. We're recording this, Dylan, just to say, and you want to become a professional racing driver, might I add.
Alright, everyone who's watching, everyone who's tuned in, that's what gamers think about racing. If racing's boring, gaming's fun. No, that's not true. I think you all need to start watching some racing when things get back to normal hopefully soon. But while we were speaking, Amit's moved up to second place. He's got 3 laps to go. Do you think he's going to catch those 6 seconds in 3 laps? I think he's pretty quick, and he could be a second and a half quicker.
I did want to actually mention that Amit has cut his way through the order from 5th to 2nd now, and he was actually, if I'm not wrong, maybe 2 laps ago or 1 lap ago, he was actually 10 seconds behind Jonathan now, and now he's only 5.2 seconds behind. So if he keeps that race up, that race pace up, that means that we could see battle in the next 2 laps. So Jonathan's got to be really careful. Of course, I think Jonathan's got a 5-second penalty, so obviously right now it's going to be really hard, and especially with Amit, he's got a 3-second penalty as well, so he's got to make sure that he steers clear and there's no contact. But yeah, he's gaining a lot of time on this track right now.
But remember, even Amit has a 3-second penalty.
Yeah, exactly. So it's gonna be it's unsure right now because I think Jonathan has actually got. I'm certain that Jonathan's got a 5-second penalty, as I did see that under the safety car. But I don't know if he has more than a 5-second penalty. So if he does, that means Amit has pretty much already inherited that win. So yeah, let's see what goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really touch and go finish. Hopefully they keep it clean. And I mean, I'm sure we're going to see Amit catch right up, and we might just see a bit of the little bit of battle going right into the last lap. Just going further down the field, Dylan, if you could just run us through where everyone's at, and then we can also look at who's gained the most and who's lost the most. I mean, some of the guys who stayed out have really fallen. People like Pradyumna have actually maintained his starting position. I think he started at 6th and now he's running 5th. So not too bad for him. I think especially running with the joystick. Whereas Rohan is still in 10th. I really thought he'd be further around, but he must have been involved in an incident, I guess.
So I do want to actually just go straight back up into the grid. Something I want to notice or mention is Jonathan, if he's got a 5-second penalty, that means that Amit only has to be in that 2-second gap, and he's pretty much inherited the win. And it seems like with only 2 laps to go, he's already 2.7 seconds off. He's gained pretty much 2.5 seconds in the last, last lap. In pretty much a lap, he's gained 2.5 seconds. So obviously, and to mention, Jonathan is actually on a controller. So we do have some controller players on top right now.
No, that's good to know. I didn't know that. I mean, and to be fair, all credit to him. To be on a controller and still be this quick. Fair points. Now we're on the penultimate lap. It's going to be really important. So it's this and one more lap left for this race. It's going to be really important is to see how much Amit can close in, because like I said before, he's got a 3-second penalty. Jonathan's got a 5-second penalty. So if Amit can close that gap a little further, then it's his race. And then if he does that, I think we'll see him in a clear lead in the championship.
Yeah, and I mean, either way, Jonathan's gonna pretty much inherit second place, worst case scenario, and that's a lot of points for the Mercedes team. It's going to be really interesting. Amit, I think, is going to put his team up in first, but we'll obviously have to see going into tomorrow. We'll get an idea of the team championship as well as the drivers championship as well.
Yeah, and here are the leaders. They start the final lap. Here's Jonathan, and you could see the background. Amit's right there. Not sure what the gap is, but
it's 1.6 seconds right now.
It's 1.6. I'm with the pace that Amit has. I think by the end of this lap he'll be within a second off, but not more than that. Which means I think he would still just about have that win.
Obviously I think if Jonathan's got a 5-second penalty, that means Amit is already the winner here, unless Amit makes a mistake in the last lap. Obviously, it's very rare that happens, but anything can happen, of course, as we've established that, especially seeing Jonathan coming from the back of the grid.
Jonathan having a little twitch there, but don't put the commentators curse, what happened last weekend as well.
Yeah, and we've actually seen it this weekend. We've seen a lot of. I was just about to say, going into the first race, I was saying Rohan Shankar and Viresh, they were being really good teammates, trying to get each other slipstream, and then we saw a little bit of a spin with them. So yeah, obviously, it doesn't seem like Jonathan has just about kept that gap. So that means that Amit will not have DRS. It's a now or never moment for Jonathan. Will he inherit? Will Amit inherit that first place?
There's a yellow flag in sector 2. There's a yellow flag in sector 2. I'm wondering if someone went off, or just or someone just had a bit of a technical glitch in terms of the connection. But nevertheless, coming out of the last corner here, you have Jonathan takes the checkered flag for a win on road at least. So you're closely followed by Amit. I think Amit was within a second there. So a lot of time being made out there. So I think on the track, yes, that was Jonathan, but I think in the results, I think that's Amit for the win. Jonathan should hold on for second place, but I think, guy in P3.
I'm actually looking at the race right now, and Jonathan is still in first place. That means that Jonathan has inherited the win, or actually kept his lead and actually won the race. It seems like Jonathan has won the race. We see a 10-second time penalty for corner cutting and gaining one place for Abhishek right there. That is a huge penalty, and a 5-second penalty for Rohan Shankar for an unserved penalty. And obviously we're seeing a lot of contact going on. And so it's been a great race. Obviously we had some technical difficulties which did delay it, but it seems like it has been a good race overall. We did see 3 drivers not make it to the end, but that is okay. And we see a lot of people in the points. We see Arya in the points, and Rohan Shankar, Abhishek, Viresh, David, Ashwini, Brad, Rajdeep, Amit, and Jonathan. And that seems to be our top 10 for the race. Obviously, we are done now. What is your thoughts on this race?
That was a good steady comeback by Viresh, actually. didn't make too much of a noise, but just slowly worked his way up. In the first race he could start on the points, but now he's got a solid seventh. So I think he's getting back in the groove, getting ready for tomorrow. Here you see Jonathan celebrating there. I think it's a great race. With the safety car through in that curveball there, well, it disrupted for some, gave people like Jonathan a great opportunity, and he's taking with both hands really, and really enjoying himself there with the win.
Yeah, and right before we end, if we can get Aditya in here actually and see what he thinks of the race. Obviously, he's been watching it, so if we can get also his thoughts on the race and what he thought about all of the carnage, especially with the safety car coming out. I don't know if Aditya is here right now or not.
No, unfortunately, he lost. He had a bit of a glitch in his connection as well. So it's just the two of us, but guys, we've had two great races today, and looking forward for you all to join us tomorrow, same time, same place. Join us for the Silverstone Ultimate E Grand Prix. See you guys tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in.
And right before we go, we have Aditya here also. So let's see, Aditya, what do you think of the race? That was an action-packed race, in my opinion. We saw a lot of penalties, but we did have a solid pace. So Jonathan did have a penalty, but it was only 3 seconds. That means that Amit as well had a 3-second penalty. That means it was like normal. Whoever had the lead. So Jonathan did win that race, especially being a controller player. That is a very big deal. We see some controller players winning races against some of these controller and esports players. So what do you think of the race? I think I've actually lost Aditya here.
We've lost Aditya. So I think we've covered all points. And guys, like I mentioned earlier, tune in the same time tomorrow and for the Silverstone GP, and hopefully one more day of exciting racing. And we're really eager to see who comes on top, then who wins the drivers and the constructors championship. See you guys. Thanks, Dylan, and see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, Arman. I will see you tomorrow. Coming in to end the stream, I hope you guys have had a good one. Obviously, this was a really, really fantastic day. Obviously, we had some technical difficulties, but we sorted it out, and we've had a really, really solid race with some really, really solid controller players, gamers, esports drivers, golfers, and as well as just general, I forgot the word, general racing wheel players as well. So yeah, it's been a really, really good and exciting race 1 and race 2, and obviously coming into tomorrow, we're going into Silverstone, which means that it's going to be really, really action packed, and it's going to be a really, really good and fun race. Obviously with Maggots and Beckett's, these cars can really have a lot of downforce, but you can also really easily lose it on that and result in a DNF or wing damage. So yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I hope you guys have a great night, and we will be back tomorrow for race 2.